Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start the workshop, Budget 2021 workshop at this time. Ms. Davis?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Before you, I sent a few hours ago via email, and everything is printed out before you, also to follow the PowerPoint presentation. So we will go through the budget overview presentation, and the main focus for today's discussion is to be able to set trim during the board meeting. There'll be a time in the middle for the sheriff if he wants to submit his budget requests. The other constitutional requests were pretty much status quo, with the exception of the increases that we knew we would have with health insurance. And then we'll go into a CARES Act discussion that'll also be requested for you all to approve conceptually as far as the buckets of distribution later in the board meeting. Okay, so the first item is a budget snapshot. And it's an overview of our total current year budget of $71.4 million. That includes all the MSBU's, general fund, disaster relief fund, et cetera. The general fund is $30.4 million. Our current millage rate is 7.9312 mils, or a total of $17.4 million. Our June estimate from the property appraiser was a 2.3, almost 2.4 billion, or 8.33% increase from the prior year. And then the July number came in at 2.401 billion, or 9.69% increase from the prior year. It's a large increase. It's the largest increase we've seen in a very long time. Of that number, new construction is $57,979,000. The rollback rate is calculated at 7.4135. One thing I wanted to go into a little bit is that increase in the value, just to kind of talk about it in a little bit more detail. So the new construction, as you all know, it gets deducted, if you will, from the rollback rate calculation for purposes of tax increase. However, in this year, something that I've never really seen before is there is a large increase in personal property taxation. It's a TPP, tangible personal property. And that number is $111 million. That is a 17% increase over last year in value of TPP, and it is equating to a large portion of the 9.69% increase. The estimated increase at the rollback rate is $457,000. So the categories didn't come across, so we'll just skip right through that. The general fund for this year's budget, this is a percentage of the total general fund in total, and we have each constitutional officer and the board expenditure dollars represented here. You guys have seen this before. So for general fund forecasts, it's been very difficult to come up with these figures. We came up with numbers and then changed them again this morning because some of the state revenue figures came in as early as this morning. We still don't have all of them in, but we did tweak them because they came in better than expected. And so the current year fund estimate is estimated to be down about $200,000 in state revenue sharing dollars that roll in from the state. Next year, state figures are not all out. However, for the general fund only, we're expecting them to be down about $288,000. That has been decreased from my estimated number yesterday of about $450,000 that I thought it was going to be down. I was estimating about an 8% decrease based off of just lots of different data and information and articles and reports that I have read. And then when they came out this morning, they were a little better than expected. And I believe, because this was an unknown on my part, we are a fiscally constrained county, and I believe that the fiscally constrained money was not as affected as some of the other dollars were, and I think that was what the difference was. I was assuming that it would be because we didn't know. Other revenue decreases are around $200,000. Increase in liability and health insurance in the general fund are totaling about $447,000. Liability increase is $157,000, and this is for countywide. Health insurance for the board is $106,000. That represents a 5.5% increase over the current year, and the sheriff's is $184,000, and it represents a 9.5% increase over the prior year. They are a different entity, and they are not in our pool, if you will, for health insurance. Most of the board operating budgets were cut by 5% or more to help offset the shortfall. The next slide goes into a little bit more detail to show you what we just talked about as far as adding up all the increases, the shortfalls, and the totals, and then we start talking about millage. So all of the things we just talked about total about $1,225,000. If you offset those increases and or shortfalls by the rollback rate, which would be a zero tax increase, that's an additional $457,000. We'd still have, at that point, we'd still have a shortfall of $768,000. We went through and cut, we have not cut any positions, but we have cut line items. And some of those line items that were cut are in anticipation of being able to utilize some of these CARE dollars to offset next year's potential expenditures that we otherwise might have had for COVID, around $350,000. But we would still have a shortfall where we are today of $411,000. So today, the current rate is 7.9312. At the current rate, it would produce a little over $19 million, or $1.6 million over the current year budget. The rollback rate, as we've discussed, is 7.4, or $457,000 over the current year budget. The $411,000 shortfall that we just talked about could be covered with a millage rate of 7.585 mils, or a 0.3462 mil reduction in rate. So it'd be a millage rate reduction, but it would still represent a 2.31% tax increase. Anything over the rollback rate is a tax increase. This is for discussion for trim. As you all know, when you set trim, you can go down, but you cannot go up. And so this is for your consideration during the meeting to set your trim rate. This number can be reduced. If things come in better than expected, we should have better numbers later in August, I believe, from the state. And there might be some things that come in that we can tweak and possibly not have to and be able to reduce if the board so chooses. What that looks like from a graphical perspective is I have from 2014, 15 year, we were at 8.49, 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And then each year for the next few years, we've rolled back. And then and I'm sorry about some of these numbers not coming through. At 7.9312, of course, the line would be straight across. One of the options would be 7.5850, which is the red line. And then the yellow line that says value is the rollback rate. the disaster relief fund is projected to be at 4.6 at the end of the fiscal year. It includes a debt of 304 from some years back of 795,000. We have payments of $150,000 a year that we are making to reduce that. We haven't made this year's payment yet. We talked about this at the last workshop, that this 150, I think we would potentially be wise to wait and see how things fall out before we make that payment. But we are expected to make that payment unless you all decide otherwise by the end of the year. That would give us a cash balance of a little over $4 million at the end of this fiscal year in disaster relief.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Davis, let me clear that up just a second. So the disaster relief fund, by the end of fiscal 2020, we're finishing up fiscal 2020. So by the end of fiscal September 2020, we would have it to 4.657, and that would include 795K of debt from the 304.
Yeah, so fund balance includes a receivable.
Yes, ma'am.
Where cash balance does not.
Yes,
So that's
ma'am.
why I was making the
Yep.
difference. Yes, sir.
And so you haven't said this, but what you're saying is we need to probably perform an analysis of whether we want to include the 150K payment on this fiscal. And are your current budget numbers reflecting that 150K as in there, the reduction, or excuse me, the
Yes,
increase that we're trying to make up?
yes.
So right there,
Is 150,000.
150K that we could potentially see.
Yes.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
And if you do or do not, which one, you would have, by the end of 2020, you would have 4,011,000 cash on hand.
If you do.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
Mhm.
So if we do not, we're a little under,
Mhm.
we're 3 point something. Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
We topped out at 5 million.
For the disaster, as far as the ordinance goes, it's,
If memory serves me, it was 6.5 when we began, but I could be completely wrong on that.
I thought it was over 5.
I think it was.
I thought it was 5.5.
So it was
We've-
5.5, not 6.5?
We've changed it a couple times. It started out at 11, then it went to 7, and then I want to say it's at,
Is the question, what is the maximum
Yes.
under our ordinance?
So what, when we started borrowing from that,
Oh.
what was we maxed out at?
What was and I would ask it a little bit differently, Commissioner Harris. What was the largest number that we had in that fund historically? It was over 11 at one point, right?
That was a long time
But
ago.
that goes back to the 90s, correct?
I don't think it was ever that much. I
Okay.
think that was the cap.
Okay.
I think it was 7 or 8, not to exceed 11 at that time.
Okay,
Then it came down, we borrowed a couple million, a few times, and we paid it back.
yes, ma'am.
And then the last deal is we borrowed 900 and some odd thousand, help me, Steve, a little over $900,000 for the roofs.
Yep.
And then we didn't pay anything back, I think, for the first year. Then we've made one payment, I think this is the second payment or something like that. And so we're trying to pay that loan back,
Yes, ma'am.
is where we are now.
The next physical year, you won't have any loan payments or interest for the next physical year,
Loan payments
or interest
for,
for the loan that we took out.
so that's what this 150,000 is, for the
That-
loan that we took out from the disaster relief for the roof.
No, I'm talking about the courthouse.
Okay, so that right now is interest only. And so that will, starting next fiscal year, and we have the principal and interest built into the
Awesome.
analysis I've already given you for the
Okay.
principal and interest of that loan. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Assuming that we use it all. We may not. We hopefully will not.
But you just pay for what you're using anyway.
Yes, sir. Did you all have any more questions on that?
I didn't have any more on that. I'm anxious to see the other presentations too, Ms. Davis, before I have my other questions.
Okay. So the next slide was for the sheriff, and let me just give you a brief summary, and they can decide if they want to come up and speak anymore. The sheriff's request included a 3% increase, which was taken out because there's no COLA increases in any of the analysis for any constitutional or any board employees. What is in the sheriff's request and what is funded in the analysis that was just presented to you is their health insurance increase, as well as they have a $90,000 operating increase. And that's it. They had a couple reclasses where they're reclassing capital to operating because there's a lease payment versus a actual capital purchase. It's a wash in and out, so there's no effect there. And that's what we've included. So all the constitutional officers' requests are included. The sheriff's is obviously the largest request, and so that's the detail of theirs. And if you all, I don't know if they have anything further, if you all have any questions for
With the
them.
sheriff's budget, is that 45% of the budget?
Of the general fund in the current year.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So the percentage is 45.
Yes, sir.
What was it last year?
This year, it's 45. I don't know what it was last year. This year, in 2020, it's 45. It's probably very similar percentage
Okay.
for last year, but we can get that for you. If you don't have any further questions for now, you can ask later. If something comes up, we can talk about the CARES dollars a little bit. That does play a big part into this budget discussion. As you all know, we are receiving $7.3 million for Hendry County from the Federal CARES Act. And tonight, I do have a walk-on under my time for you all to approve an additional $240,758 from the Florida Housing Finance Corporation that we are going to use in addition to the CARES money for individual assistance. Those two numbers total a little over $7.5 million. All these dollars must be spent on or before December 30th. 2020, or we will lose those dollars. And so a working group was established, and it met in the sunshine for several meetings that consisted of all of our governmental entities here in Hendry County, all our constitutionals, our economic development office, our extension office, and key staff from the Board of County Commissioners. It included City of LaBelle, City of Clewiston, the Health Department, HRMC, and various different designees from those offices. We went through and we talked about what we thought would be a recommendation for you all, the board, to how to spend these dollars. And so there's not a requirement from DEM, if you will, to submit a plan to the state on how we're going to do this, but it's up to everyone locally and individually on how we are going to split this up. So we all met, and we requested all the governmental entities to send in what they needed. And so these are needs that you all have a list before you. It's a spreadsheet that has a bunch of numbers on it. And it lists from every entity and/or department. Some of it's summarized, but what their request was. And all these requests, we feel, will qualify under the CARES Act. And when all of that was added up and totaled, it represented about 75% of the total for CARES. And I know there's probably different perceptions and perspectives on this, but the working group felt like this would be, these are all things that are needed. A lot of these items will offset future taxpayer dollars, things that we would have to do anyway in future budget years. And because we're so fiscally strapped, we feel like this is a really good opportunity to be able to save all of our taxpayers taxes going forward as well, and it'll also help fight the COVID pandemic in our community. Private entities would represent 25%, and it would be a benefit for individual assistants and small businesses. The 25% plus the housing dollars would equate to a little over $2 million, 2.133892. It would be assistance for mortgage, rent, utilities, and workforce development opportunities. Also with the business assistance. Specifically for the business assistance, it represents 57% of the private care dollar allocation, or $1,047,000. Hendry businesses,
Jennifer,
yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I was just wondering whether y'all were going through that exercise, but what specifically in workforce development opportunities were you thinking?
Well, and that came from the Economic Development Office, and so we asked that question, and it could be for folks that need training for a trade or some kind of certification that they could be better employed.
Okay, understood. Got it. Thank you.
And so that would be applied from a individual. So if they have an opportunity to attend, maybe be a paramedic or an EMT or some kind
Right.
of, any kind of certification, there would be potential funding for that.
Got it. Okay.
What about welder,
So we haven't,
trade?
we're not, we haven't defined that it has to be public safety or it has to be a welder, it has to be. So if it's something that would better an individual, that they could get a certificate in some kind of trade to be able to receive a job, that is something that they would apply for. And there are limits, and with the FAQs that we sent out earlier for individual assistance, depending on your circumstances, you would be eligible up to a certain amount. So it may or may not pay for the whole thing. It may subsidize the cost for that certification, if you will. But that specific portion, we're looking to roll this out in a couple different phases. And so the first phase would be the individual assistance for the rent, utilities, and mortgage. The workforce development would be, I can't remember, I think we'll get there here in a second, or it's on that other plan that we produce, 2 or 3. So it would give us a couple more weeks to be able to tweak those requirements.
So they're filling out an application. Who's going to be in control of the allocation of these dollars?
So, so it's all going to be online. It'll all be online. We're proposing to go live with phase 1 on Monday, assuming that you all approve conceptually our plan tonight. And so our grants department and our OMB department will administer. They've already have their internal processes outlined. The OMB, we have a call center set up as well, and we have folks that will be manning that call center to be able to answer questions. So there'll be a call center, there'll be an online application. The applications will go through our grants department, our OMB department, and then also the county manager's office is for final approval and or denial. And so they'll all be, everything is first come, first serve. Everything will be stamped and in order. If something is incomplete, there will be correspondence to the individual that they need to submit an item that, say, was missing. They'll have so many days, and they'll know in that correspondence how long they have to get that information back, so they won't go to the back of the line. In other words, as long as they respond within a reasonable amount of time, they'll stay in their place, if you will. But if they do not respond within that period of time, then they would lose their spot in that application process.
Mr. Chair, so Jennifer, they, for instance, the daycares, they have told them they have to pull more employees and less students. Would that cause them to fit into the CARE Act? Because they want them now to pull, they take their numbers down lower but increase their employees. So You understand? So otherwise, if you have less children, you have less funds coming in. Would they qualify for the CARE Act also?
So, for businesses, are you speaking
I'm
for?
speaking of business.
Okay, so, for businesses, it is a business with 25 employees or less, 25 to 50 employees, or greater than 50 employees. So is your question, they had, maybe 30 employees, maybe before, and now they have 20? Is that what you're saying?
They want them, the state want them to increase their employees but have less, children.
Those additional employees.
Right. So, so this criteria is existing employees for that business.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So I got a handful of questions. I'm gonna follow up on what Ms. Bird said first. So a daycare today has 5 employees and they have, let's say they have 25 students that are attending said daycare. And the state has put in a mandate that says in order to do that, you have to have a 5-to-1 ratio. You were making that, now we're making it 2-to-1, so you have to increase it and go to 10 employees. That's gonna take them, they're still gonna be in the threshold of less than 25 employees. If what I'm understanding from you is that entity would qualify for $10,000 from Hendry County via the CARES Act from the federal government, is that right?
Correct.
They would get a $10,000 stipend one time
Yes.
to be able to declare how they want to spend it, to help them keep their doors open, right?
Yes, within certain criteria, we'll go into that or
Yes,
else in
ma'am.
the plan, but yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, I understand that. Okay, going back. Said daycare or said restaurant is leasing their building from someone. They can qualify for that $10,000 through the business assistance aspect. And then are they also going to be able to qualify for a portion of the 25% and/or the 2.1 million that helps them with mortgage, rent, utilities, workforce, and development?
So if they're an individual, so I asked this question, and Ian and I were talking about this, and I think this is the same question you're asking, because I asked it earlier today. If I am a business owner, and maybe I own this daycare, for
Yes, ma'am.
example, and I qualify, and I meet the income qualifications, because there's income qualifications for individual assistance, and I meet all the requirements for individual assistance, I could receive assistance for rent or mortgage or utilities accordingly. Let's just say, and this may or may not be valid, but let's just say I also own a business with 25 employees or less
Okay,
that has been impacted with COVID. I could also then apply and receive, if all the information is correct and vetted properly and confirmed, $10,000 for my business.
yes, ma'am.
But it would go to the business. Also, the rent, the utilities, and the mortgage payments go to the vendor. They don't go to the individual. So it goes to the landlord, it goes to the mortgage company, it goes to the utility company.
Via Hendry County?
Yes,
So said business would show an FP&L statement, would show the lease payment to said company, show all of these things. Hendry County is going to verify, and then they're going to say, congratulations, or no, we need more information from you. What is the cap that they can qualify for? Is it 1 year of rent? Is it 6 months?
So
Or is that
based-
to be determined?
so it's not on this PowerPoint. It's, Ian, you might need to. don't know.
Because I would imagine, Ms. Davis, that's something that some of our small business owners are actually struggling with right now.
Oh, let me look.
And,
There's a-
and let me rephrase that. I know for a fact that's what some of them are struggling with, and I don't want to name names, but, you know, I just want to start seeing those dollars and cents flowing.
So
If possible.
there's a cap. So for, let me see if I can just.
Are y'all okay with us drilling in?
Absolutely.
In this
That's
detail?
what we're here
Okay.
for, yeah.
So for individual assistance, someone could get a rent, a mortgage, utility, or workforce development, and then there's a food security for pantries for non-for-profits also as a portion of that.
Ms. Davis, do we have any that are based, food for pantries, do we have any that are based in Hendry, other than like Iglesia Villanueva?
Well, we have a lot, we have some churches, and
Okay.
we have United Way, and we have Salvation
are-
Army, and
okay.
we have folks like that,
Yes, ma'am.
that have pantries, and so there's an amount set aside for them to be able to receive and stock those pantries
Okay.
for everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
For the individual, and this is in your draft document that you should have in front of you also, there is an income house, and these, we are using the state guidelines from the Florida Housing guidelines it's SHIP, but it's not to be confused with SHIP, but that's how it's coming to us. Your household income must be between $15,000 and $93,773, but that 93 is for a household size of 8 to 10 persons. There is a chart here that tells the income requirements. So you have to meet these income requirements. And then there is a cap. So 1 to 4 persons in your household, $2,500, 5 persons, $3,006, $3,500, 7 persons in your household, $4,000, and 8 to 10 persons in your household would be a maximum of $5,000 for individual assistance. And so this is how the state was doing some of their funds, so we just thought that would be the way to do it. And then also with the business, we followed very similarly, I can't even speak, the SBA guidelines. And so with the employees, with the 25 to 50 and greater. And so we looked at SBA and how they rolled out some of their CARES funding for specific businesses. And we used those same type of guidelines for Hendry County.
So, Jennifer, on your employees, do they have to be part-time or full-time?
Employees.
Can they be either one?
Well,
Number.
and that's a very good question. We talked about that quite a bit because we know that our hospitality businesses were very impacted by COVID. And a lot of those employees, a lot of waitresses and so forth are what you would call a 1099 employee. And so we vetted that and we said you don't have to show a W-2, for example, because if you did that, you would be excluding all those types of folks. And so one of the criteria in here is if someone's having a hard time showing that type of
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
employment,
can you ask Mike to maybe mute?
I just did.
Okay.
Commissioner Swindle,
That's what I was texting.
could you mute your phone, please, sir? You're bouncing all over the place.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
we can also get a letter from the employer. And so, because we're asking, you have to be a Hendry County resident. We're asking for a pay, your last pay stub or something like that. And so also a letter from your employer, if needed, will
Okay.
also suffice.
Most of your restaurants are part-time.
Yes, sir. And that was why, that's why we
Yeah.
did it that way. We're not, and I just want to say, we are going to be we are going to vet all these applications. We are going to make sure that all these applications are proper. We are not trying to have gotcha moments, is the word that I use. We are going to have common sense, and we are going to look at these, and we are going to make sure it makes sense. We are going to make sure that they have all the proper documentation that is required. And if they need a little bit of help, we're going to help them. That's why I said if they have an incomplete application, they have 8 out of the 9 items, we're not going to throw them to the back of the list. We're going to communicate with them, and we're going to say, hey, and we're going to give them time and really try to help people along. And they're going to stay in the spot of their application. And so we're going to do everything we can to help our constituents receive these dollars properly.
But when the word goes out, it'll be first come, first serve.
And it is.
They'll know that, though.
And it is, first come, first serve, and upon your approval this evening, we have FAQs, what we call, the facts and questions regarding all these programs. And so it's our intention to get those out this week, hopefully tomorrow, in advance of the applications opening up on Monday. So people we have a website established with a web page. Everybody will go on. Our phone line will be open on Monday at 8 a.m. on the 3rd. And so people can go through and start reading it, see what is required. They can go ahead and start getting some of their documents together ahead of Monday. So when it's open on Monday, they can go ahead and start submitting. One of the things that is a question mark, we have received the $1.8 million just Friday, was it Friday? Or, yeah, Thursday or Friday of last week. So we have that in hand. We have to spend that. We don't have the contract for the 75% yet.
Yep.
We should be getting that soon. We don't have that yet. And so we're going to start rolling this out as quickly as possible. But when we get to the point, if we get to the point, I hope we don't, but if we get to the point where we've expended the whole 25%, we don't have the other 75% in yet, and that is a reimbursable, or we should have the contract by then, I would hope. And then the 75% is a reimbursable grant. So we have to write a check, and we have to then submit for the 75%. That's not unlike
Any other grant.
any other grants we have, road grants, and many millions of dollars that we handle every single day. So we're
But
used
it's
to
the- I
doing
mean, it's the
that.
number one thing that Miss Butler used to yell at me about privately, and I thought I was 14 again, was because she said every time we apply for these grants, we have to front load it. Correct, Coach Clark? And so, it's understanding that, but at the same time, I mean, I appreciate the warning, but you're just letting us know again, be prepared to be able to front that cash and then hold the rope until it gets paid back, right?
And so we're just trying to, I would like to have a better feeling and understanding from DEM what that turnaround is gonna be. And so as soon as we know what that is, we'll communicate that with you, and I know that'll make you all feel better, and it'll make all of us feel better.
Ms.
And
Davis, you are gonna have the ability to hit the pause button though, right? Like when you see said funding, you don't feel the agreements discussions are going cold, we're going to stop essentially with guaranteeing of disbursement.
yes, and
Okay.
so in our draft plan that's before you, there's some language that says, basically first come, first serve until those buckets are exhausted and/or BOCC discretion. And the only reason that's in there is for that reason. If we get to a point from a cash flow perspective, we just need to pause. Doesn't mean that things go away. We just may have to hold before we pay these approved applications. And as far as from a cash flow perspective, it just gives us the ability to do that,
So you don't think they're gonna be like FEMA, do you?
I do not think that's going to happen. I do not think that's gonna happen, but we don't know that.
We hope not.
I don't think that's the intent. The whole intent of this program is to get money into people that need it and to help them under the circumstances. So I would,
Do they have a deadline once they get the app?
that's what we're trying to get a better understanding of
Because
their
if you don't give them a
deadlines.
deadline, well, they'll drag.
Wait, I think, is your question does the local applicant have a deadline? Or is your question, does the
No,
federal government?
local,
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I answered the
yeah.
wrong question.
local.
So, it's until the funds are exhausted. And so.
Ms. Davis, I would just, okay, so I want to piggyback onto that question. So how are you going to get how are you going to disperse this information? What are your thoughts in-house on how you're going to do this, and what mediums are you going to use to let the general public know of Hendry County that this is occurring other than Facebook or a webpage or something like that? What are your thoughts on that? What's your team come up with?
Well, so obviously, we're going to push it out through social media. We're going to have a press release. We have the website. And, other than that, I think word will travel fast. We are open, and Emily may have more detailed plans laid out for how we're going to do that. We could do radio. There's newspaper, there's a lot of different mediums, and any and all mediums that we can use to get the word out, we will do so.
I think in a lot of our areas, the problem you're gonna find that social media doesn't work. Montura, Pioneer,
Sure.
you know, places like that, Flag Hole, where if we have community centers or we can have churches, we need to get stuff posted there as well. Wheeler Estates, I mean, they're out in the middle of nowhere. We're working on the road, but they're out in the middle of nowhere. So my point is, we have a lot of folks that are out, way out, that may not get this information until the pot's empty, and then they're left out. So I believe we really need to make sure we reach every constituent of Henry County. Most of these areas they feel like they're forgotten, to be honest with you. When I go to my meetings in Felder, they say, we don't have no information down here. I'm sure you're gonna hear the same thing probably in Montour and Pioneer, because these folks in Wheeler Estates tell me the same thing. So we need to get a way to reach them somehow.
I don't know if this is possible. Mark might try to hit me with a stick. We are getting ready to send trim notices out, and I don't know if there would be a possibility of putting like a mailer flyer in that, because that's every taxpayer.
Well, I would just think that COVID dollars may qualify you for WAFC to be able to push this. If not, I
Yes.
bet it's a few $1,000s, plus they have a public service aspect of their
Sure.
radio station that they would, and I think that's a great medium to use, especially with now LaBelle having that. You can reach that in all sectors of our county, of Hendry and Glades. I would also challenge you to the Henry Glades Sunday News and the I don't know what the new Calusa News / Calusa Bell is called. What is it? The Lake?
Lake Okeechobee.
Yeah, the Lake Okeechobee News, I think. I would use that. And then, how, asking, you said the grants department, the OMB department, and then obviously you're gonna have final veto power, it sounds like. How many people are you thinking you're gonna add to be able to administer this? Or who do you have on your team? Is it a team of 5? Is it a team of 7? Are they all in-house people?
So right now, we have a couple individuals that are part-timers that we've approached and asked if, and we can pay for, with COVID dollars,
Yes, ma'am.
obviously, for this, that we are going to have assist as well. And they're already in-house, and we felt like, to begin with, that would be really good, because we can hit the ground running. They're already in-house. We're not waiting, advertising, whatever. And then we're going to see how it goes. But we have discussed hiring additional administrative personnel.
You're
if-
gonna bring in Janet Papanoff from free agency?
if-
Is she
if
coming in on
needed.
waivers? Is she still in the community? I just think that she would,
Yeah, so, no, we
No.
haven't talked to Janet,
Yeah.
but we do have 2 in-house
Yes, ma'am.
folks that we have already added to the team to be able to
And then
administer these.
I guess the final thing I would love to see is just, first off, I'm gonna give this my blessing. I'm gonna support this wholeheartedly in our board meeting. I'm excited to see that y'all are doing this and pushing these dollars and cents out. I would love for you to give us a couple scenarios. You know how in years past you've said if a home's $200,000, it's a $30 tax increase, or if it's a $500,000 home, or if it's a $50,000, this is what it equates to. I would love for you to give us a couple, for instances, of if Quality Electric has 26 employees, if we apply to this, which we will not be applying to, by the way, we're still in essential services, we're getting after it. We did, along with a number of other companies, we're fortunate enough to receive payroll protection plan dollars. But the long and the short of it is that I would just love to see some examples of how different companies are going to fare with this and what that number could look like. And I don't think, and I just think it would be a good exercise for y'all to show us what it might look like as a snapshot. Because I know we're going to get asked a lot of questions for this, from different entities that are out there. And the service industry is the biggest one that comes to mind for me. I'm very appreciative of you saying, your first answer isn't going to be no. And then the last thing I would add is something that Commissioner Harris brought up. And I want to go even a step further. I think you should give yourself a 30-day window. December's going to be here like that, and this we don't know how this is going to play out. November's going to be very odd with us, because if Trump doesn't get reelected, oh God, the politics that are going to come unfolded on this nonsense. And so how we're trying to balance all that, and if dollars do unfortunately get frozen or something like that, and then we're out X, I would love to see what that windfall is going to look like, or what the mad rush is going to be, Ms. Davis. So if y'all, it may upset some people, but if we say, okay, you have a 30-day window to apply, and if within 30 days, if you haven't finalized your application, then you're cut off. let's all be honest with ourselves. It's a wink, wink, 30 days, right? Because we know we're probably gonna open it up another 15 days, but if we give you a set deadline, I think you're gonna be more apt to come in and follow up and meet said deadline. It's, you know, I mean, you remember when you got your syllabus at the beginning of semester, you went to, when's my midterm, when's my final? Okay, I can miss 7 days of this class, cool, you know, and so on and so forth. And I just think, you know, humans are what they are, and I think we ought to give them milestones and say, we need this done by August 30th or September 30th, or you're not gonna be applying, and we're not giving out X number of dollars. What that's gonna do is that's gonna make people come to the feed trough, look at what's there, and then you're gonna know exactly what you have to provide, I think.
Yeah, and we can do that. And
Y'all can mull that
the-
over. If you don't like that idea, then don't do it, but it's
We-
just some ideas for you.
Honestly, we had it in there, and then we took it out because we weren't wanting to be so constrictive.
Yeah.
And we were wanting to be more accommodating with folks. So we can absolutely put that back in there. And the other thing I was looking, and I'm not finding it, and I believe it's in this document, but we have milestones, to your point, of 50%, 75, oh, here it is, there we go.
Jennifer,
It's-
even with that being said, instead of starting it, open it up on the 3rd, I would at least wait off a week and advertise for that week to give everybody the same opportunity. Because like they just said, everyone don't have the access to get the information, but when they open up, they should have reached everyone about that time. I wouldn't open the window up on the 3rd because everybody won't have the information. And we giving some people a head start over other people that need it just as well as they do.
I agree with that. 'Cause like I said, our outlying communities, we need to make sure that they have the opportunity. A lot of those folks, some of them haven't worked. You know, and to your point, as far as restaurants, and there's a lot of businesses that they're hurt. So I think everyone needs the opportunity to come to the table at the same time. And I know, if we, even pushing it back, you know, giving them a week to get that, I know there's gonna be some that say, I didn't know. But at that point, we gave you ample opportunity, and we tried to get out as much as we could to get that information. Rather than Monday, say Monday we get slammed, 20 of the 25% goes out the window like that.
The only thing
So-
I would want y'all to marinate on a little bit on this is, do you think it's fair to say most of our constituents have cable TV or something along those lines? You don't think that we
Not
do?
some of the, no, sir, and,
No?
most of my Felda and Fort No Acres don't even hardly have internet.
Okay.
We have a lot of issues with internet and stuff around those areas, so.
I've watched like 2 hours of TV in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's been purposeful. And my ability to get media news has been very limited.
Yeah.
But even with that, though, the overwhelming response that I've seen from people saying, hey, all the other counties around us are giving out COVID dollars.
Yep.
What are y'all doing? And what I've said is basically hold the rope, please, hold on. We're trying to get that process started. And so I don't know how I can't say it delicately. I want y'all to really think about us opening this up yesterday, you know, because I think that there are some companies, Chairman, they're fighting. They're treading water right now, and it's wavy, and they're getting a good gulp every now and again, and they need a little shot in the arm, you know. And I just think, you know, I don't know. I honestly see your slides. I'm very appreciative, but I still don't know. We have 1.8 on hand right now, right? I'm dying to see how quickly that we burn through that with the parameters that we have set. What does your tummy tell you, Jennifer? Do you think that we're gonna churn through that pretty quickly, or do you think we're gonna be 30 days and only have 15 applicants, or
Well, we
is the
did.
response gonna be overwhelming?
We agreed as a working group, and Mr. Martin actually is the one that brought it up, and we all agreed to do a 10% holdback in each bucket, okay? And so we decided that we wanted to do that because we don't know. We don't
Yeah.
know if there's gonna be a run, and then we have to say, whoa, wait a minute, let's see, let's pause. There has been, and the honest answer is I don't know. We are agriculture, and so a lot of our businesses are essential, have been essential services throughout this entire pandemic. We do know, though, that there are a lot of, and even agriculture is hurting. Even though they were essential service, doesn't mean that they won't not qualify for funding because they are hurting a lot. They were essential service, but we know the farmers and everything was rotten in the fields, and people haven't been able to sell their cattle because of the market and so forth. And so, you know, so we don't know.
Yes,
And so we decided to hold back 10%, just for the ability to be able to pause, hit the pause button if we needed to a little bit to see what happens. There's been other counties, though, that have, there's been other counties that haven't been able to spend their buckets, if you will. And they've had to then come back and then change their plan, if you will, and make it maybe a little bit less restrictive to be able to spend those dollars. And so we very well may end up coming back and doing that. We don't know. And so not for anything, and there's always so many different perspectives, and that's why we're talking about this, is the reason we wanted to open it up on the 3rd is we were just trying to get it out to the public as soon as possible because we know people need
So if you open up
help.
on the 3rd, when would you accept the first application?
On the 3rd.
On the 3rd?
I hope we have that problem, y'all.
Well, and that's my only, again, my biggest concern is the ones that are in the areas that won't have the information.
Yes, sir.
And need it. That's the only concern. Trust me, I want to get the dollars to them as quick as possible. And I'm actually about to ask the question, is 25%?
Enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
I
when
doubt
I
if
look
it
at our
is.
numbers, we're pretty heavy on some of these numbers.
Yeah.
So my question would be, should that split have been a little more evenly? Some of these numbers are big.
So-
And I get it, we got to operate, but I don't think we have to operate as a Cadillac right now. We can get by as a Ford.
So, just a couple things Margaret just mentioned as far as the community outreach, we will reach out to all of our outlying communities with some of the community centers, ask them to put information up, and so forth, just to try to get the word out to some of our, like Pioneer and Felda and Montura and some of those areas, just as a side. As far as the split, the 75-25, I feel like we all knew that this would be a point of discussion. And so when we decided how to go about this, it wasn't a matter of, okay, we're going to say how many people are in the city of Clewiston or how many people are in the city of LaBelle, and we're going to split it up like that. Because if you did that, there's so many services that the county serves the entire county through EMS, through law enforcement, through, fire, through a lot of other services, the clerk's office, all the different constitutional officers serve the entire county. And so we didn't do that. What we decided to do is we asked each entity, what do you need? It wasn't, oh, we're just going to do 75-25. What do you need to be able to fight this pandemic? What is it that you need and how much is it? And so that is the exercise we went through, and it turned out to be 75% of the total. And so we had the discussion, well, that's a lot. Some of these other counties, some of these larger counties have done 50-50, for example. I don't know if it's Lee, but just for conversation's sake, a county like that, they might have done a 50-50 split. Well, we're not Lee County, number one, and you could argue it either way. They're much larger. They got a lot of dollars directly from the federal government. They were able to roll this out a lot quicker than we've
They were
been
one of
able.
the 12 counties, and that was completely out of our hands. There were
And
12
so,
counties that got
and so we
billions.
can't
And they got their-
necessarily compare to that, but what we were stating is that the 75% is a benefit to all taxpayers. And so these things are not just, these are things we need. And so some of these things we need now, we need yesterday because of the pandemic, but they are also things that we need or would have had to spend in future budget years. Our taxpayers would have to have spent these dollars in the future. And so we were looking at this as an offset to future taxation for all of our taxpayers and to get us where we need to be able to fight not only this pandemic, but it'll go a long way to help us be more resilient for many other disasters. And so that's just a perception or a perspective, but that is what our group felt was the justification for the 75-25.
So it should be able to help in the next year or two budget-wise.
I will tell you that part of the $363,000, I think it was, that I just showed you, that I cut for next year's budget was because of some of the things that we're gonna be able to do in next year with these CARES dollars. If some of those dollars were to go away, some of those, that would have to come back, and that would change the outlook of where we are with the budget.
Again, just some big numbers, so I'm curious if 25% going to our public's gonna be
Mr.
enough.
Chair?
Yes.
I think also we should challenge staff. Once again, I'm just sitting here listening and thinking. I think we should look at this as a moment where we get an opportunity to express and/or flex our muscles a little bit on how quickly we can get the word out. In the event this was a natural disaster, which you could argue very easily that it is, an extreme natural disaster, and I've equated it in many conversations that I've had anecdotally with people that this is a Category 5 storm that has completely wrecked us. We just don't see any infrastructure damage whatsoever. But I think that we will be shortly. I think we're starting to see people go out of business, and we're going to see people lose homes, and I think it's going to be very, very detrimental to our community and the bottom line. I think that we should challenge staff. They're telling us they'd like to roll this out quickly. I think we should engage our chambers, our EDC. I think that we should engage our community centers, the Felder Community Center, the Pioneer Community Center, the Harlem, you have the beautiful marquee as you come into Harlem right there at Pastor Brown's, Reverend Brown's church. I just can't imagine that we can't get this word out in a community as small as ours. And I would just equate it to, we have a storm, it's time to board up. Well, this is a little bit different than that. We have a storm, and we've been afforded an opportunity from the federal government. The state of Florida has finally passed those dollars down. We had a lot of arm pulling and a lot of kicking and clawing in back rooms to have this money finally start to flow to us rural folks. And now we need people to start applying for it, because I will tell you, it's already been pushed back to us a little bit that we've given you X number of dollars, rural America. What have you done with it? And so that's just my final commercial on us wanting to push that out. And I'm really, really interested to see what is the groundswell. How quickly does everybody come out of the woodwork and want to apply and get engaged in this?
I think that's a perfect example,
Yeah.
Commissioner. That'd be a perfect exercise. The last storm we had, the biggest problem, everyone said, we had no communication. All right, here we go.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell
Here's our
you,
opportunity to exercise that communication and see how efficient
fast you can
and
get it
quick
out.
we can get this done.
And I got so sick of getting that phone call, from on my text phone, and then a text followed by it in Spanish and English. And I think that we can
we could
legally,
use that.
we can do that, And so, let's see if we shut a server down. That'd be the first time in the history of Henry County, probably,
So Jennifer, you already have the call center set up, or
It'll be ready to go Monday.
it's a different line, it won't be the same line we operating under?
No, it'll be a separate designated line.
In my tenure from 2008, Commissioner Harris, I want you to tell me if you feel differently. I've never recalled where staff has said, we want to speed up. Jennifer, no disrespect, but, just taking the public transportation discussion. Hey, let's push it off to January. That's not what you're saying now. You're saying, you're not saying this, I'm gonna say this. December's right around the corner. We got X number of millions of dollars that are coming. Let's get it out. Let's go.
Yeah.
So.
And from the government, and so for the public assistance perspective and the business perspective, of course, time is of essence for them on a very personal matter. And that's why we want to speed it up. And for the governmental side of things, because we know how long it takes government to do things, we have got to spend this money by December 30th or lose it. So we have a lot of items that we want to accomplish and to be able to spend this money. So we've got to get rolling very quickly in order to be able to accomplish that also.
I think once it gets out, I think people's gonna respond.
Go to work.
If
Get the advertisement out there and go to work. I mean, that's the key. Like I said, my concern is I want to make sure everyone has opportunity
Yes.
to be a part of this. I don't want someone left out because they don't have internet. I don't want some left out because they don't have a community center to get the notice.
Right.
Some of the communities are riding around in pickups themselves with bullhorns, getting information out during the hurricane. So I want to make sure that everyone in Hendry County, not District 3, everyone in Hendry County has the opportunity to apply for these dollars. That's my biggest concern. As long as we're covering that, you can start tomorrow if you want to, as long as you get the information out. I'm good with it too. I want to see these dollars spent.
Okay. Great.
Is that all on the CARES Act?
I think we kind of jumped ahead. Yes, sir. These were just the bullet points that we just talked about, that Phase 1 would roll out on August 3rd. For private assistant, governmental entities would be on a reimbursable basis starting immediately for time's sake purposes. We received the 25% last week of the $1,118,000. We're working with DEM to find out how long the remaining 75% will take to receive. Online applications and call centers are established. And then the application review and approval denial process is established by the OMB office. So with that said, just the overall budget discussion moving forward, we were going to recommend an August workshop to the second meeting in August preferably, or in between our meetings in August. We can get with you all individually as far as your schedules later for that. And hoping that by then, we would have the state revenue figures that have come in, and we'll be able to know better where we are for our September hearings, to be able to establish our final trim rate. And then also to be able to have any additional fire MSBU discussions before the first meeting in September. So the first meeting in September, we will establish the final MSBU rates. And so the updated agreements will come before you in August of what we've been talking about, and some of the figures that we talked about as far as the benefits of providing some of the additional benefits for the volunteer firefighters.
Do we have any MSBU's that are projected to increase?
Only the
Fire.
East Fire.
Yep, okay.
So
And that's why.
y'all are not settled on that MSBU yet, the fire MSBU?
It won't be finalized till the first meeting in September.
Will be finalized, but
Yeah,
we
but-
we can make a suggestion to you, and what so we're in the last meeting in July, we have one more meeting in August that's slated. You're proposing one in between the two meetings, the workshop?
Well, we could either do it at the second meeting in August before the board meeting, or we
Yes,
could
ma'am.
have another workshop in between those meetings, whatever your
I would
preference is.
propose before the second meeting
Yeah.
to have that discussion. The only thing is I don't know if you wanna flip-flop it. I don't need to hear from anybody, but I'm saying just to make it more convenient for people from Clewiston, if it's a Clewiston issue that's being discussed, we're usually sympathetic to
Oh,
that.
we could-
But not a big deal, either
Okay.
way. I mean,
Yeah, it's going to end up being everybody.
yes, sir, good point.
It's going to be everybody. It's going to be LaBelle, Clewiston,
Let
really
me ask you
everybody.
this, Mr. Chair, how much time do we have in this discussion? 25 minutes?
No, you got an hour.
This is the last slide that I had.
Yeah, we've got an hour. We can,
Well, let me ask you this, so then, can we go back to the discussion on the millage then?
Yeah.
I'm dying to know what are y'all's thoughts?
We got to set the first millage today, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you went back to the rollback rate, would that cover the whole budget?
No, sir. You're going to
Okay.
be short $412,000 based off of what we think we know today.
So, and that estimate can only get potentially better, but I think it's gonna get more grim from the state revenues. As everything's pointing toward a downward trend. You kind of disagree with that, Ms. Davis, you said.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I don't disagree with that. I have great concern
Yeah.
with that.
I think we're fixing to get the rug snatched out from under us on our 1 cents and all that stuff. So, now, obviously, if we go to 7.93, everybody and their dog is happy. We do a whole bunch of things that make everybody warm and fuzzy. And just for everybody's concern, I'm 100% against 7.9312 being our current millage.
But
That's
if you
just my
go to
thoughts.
7.5,
I like the 7.5 a lot, Ms.
yeah,
Bird.
because you can only go down, you can't take it back up, so.
You know, and I know what y'all's thoughts are on that. And then, the only other question I have is, you know, maybe I'm too concerned over COVID, but I'm scared to death. How many years have we been able to give a COLA?
The last
At least 3 in a row.
At least 3, yeah. I'm glad to hear you talking about that. Keep going.
My thoughts are, if we're not sympathetic to a COLA this year, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it next year.
Well, I think next year's gonna be worse than this year.
Yes, sir.
A whole lot.
And so,
Big time.
you know, I think that number's a little under 500,000, isn't it?
So for the general fund, and it's not in the figures we talked about today, but for the general fund, it includes all the constitutionals, and the board it would be $376,000,
It's a $376,000, not counting constitutional?
including
including.
constitutionals.
That
All right, so I'm gonna say something that's very contentious. I love all the constitutionals. I don't believe for one second that some of them aren't giving their people a 3% cost of living within their own budget, and that's completely within their rights. We give them 1/12 of their budget. We give them 12/12 of their budget, and then they do what they want with it, right? Could you have a heart-to-heart with them between now and our next discussion and find out if they've actually built that in there so that we could actually trim that $376,000? I know your numbers don't have a cost of living in, and we have a majority of the employees. We have 187 of X number or whatever it is. Maybe it's 212. I don't know what it is, but it's a large part of that $376,000 pie. And so what my thoughts are is that I don't know how we build that in there, you know, and I don't know if that takes that number, Ms. Bird, to 7.6, you know, or what, and then we have we have another one of our healthy discussions with the sheriff and say, what do you, you know, we know what you need, we know what you want, where can we get in the middle on that? And then how do we, because my fear is that if we don't give a COLA this year, it's gonna be very difficult to find it next year.
I'm glad you brought that up,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Turner.
And then,
Yes,
Mr.
go ahead,
Chairman, the
Coach
last
Swindle.
thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, is, you know, I know it sounds like a cheapskate, and Commissioner Harris is gonna be mad at me for saying this, but I think that we delay the 150 payment. That's almost half of that COLA right there, if we delay that payment back to the disaster relief fund right there.
Yeah.
And so, we kind of play a little roulette, see what the COVID dollars are gonna do, see if there's any light at the end of that tunnel, and kind of balance those things out.
In doing that, what would the trim be? Would it be 7.5?
7.75.
7.7?
7.75.
And that'd give you a little bit of, not a lot, but just a little bit of.
And you can always take it
And
down.
you could come down. And so if you were wanting to entertain that option, then you would need to do that during the meeting tonight, because then you couldn't go back up.
Does that
Well, we can
include,
always go down, though. If things come
But
up,
you
if
c- yeah.
it comes in better than we expected, which none of us expect that. But at least that point, I mean, I'm really glad this conversation come up, because you know, every year I complain and tell you, find somewhere else to cut, we gotta get that raised. So I'm really glad that come up, because realistically, next year it might not be.
Yes, sir.
But this year, our employees have went through the same thing everyone else has. We're all employees together, so we've been through this. So I'm really glad that come up. Thank you, Commissioner Turner. I
Well,
appreciate that.
I'll let Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Hey, so along those same lines, we know that at a 3% COLA, that it goes to 7.75, and I know this may be quick math and impossible now, but maybe by the next meeting, I would love to see what would a 4% and 5% COLA look like, just to give us some options there as well. Would that be doable, Jennifer?
Absolutely. However, you've got to
Choose
approve the
tonight.
millage tonight of a
That's
not
right.
to exceed rate.
Yeah, and I'm okay with even, you know, padding the millage rate tonight if we need to. I'm sorry, the trim rate tonight, and just to ensure we have that option.
Here's what I'd like to counter to that, Commissioner Swindle. And Commissioner Wills has done a masterful job of educating me to this. So many people come and get gainfully employed by the county, not because of the bottom line, but because of the benefits package that they receive. We've maintained that benefits package, and we've promised our employees that we're not going to cut that. We've actually reinstated a few things. Fair statement? Through COVID, Ms. Davis, other than, and I don't mean to distress anybody, but I would have to presume that you've had some discussions internally with your team of the potential of furlough, what layoffs look like, all of these, because hard discussions could be around the corner in the event the economy goes to what it was, you know, back in the doldrums. But Commissioner Swindle, I would press upon you that our employees, have we had to lay anybody off during COVID?
No.
We, you know, a county employee has been held true through this entire downfall. And I think that that says a lot, you know, it
I'm
gives
speaking
you
for
peace of mind.
BOCC
Yes, ma'am.
employees.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Ms., have y'all had to lay anybody off? Have y'all?
Not yet.
No, you know, but you know it's potentially around the corner, you know? But I just think that I can only entertain the concept of padding the trim to support a 3% number at 376,000. While 4 and 5% would be phenomenal,
No.
I can't do it in my mind right now because I know what the private sector's doing, and we're clawing and screaming and scratching and
Yeah.
begging.
Well,
and
I'm certainly not, pushing forward or suggesting we absolutely need to do it, other than I would just like to see it for data and for numbers' sake, just to have that option in front of us.
But how many times have we set the millage and then we come back and won't lower it?
We never lower it.
That's
I think
what I
one
mean.
time in my tenure,
So once you
but I
set,
wasn't gonna say it.
yeah, once you set,
No, not millage, trim. I'm sorry, the
trim,
trim. I
trim.
said millage, I apologize.
yeah. But, so we need to
So
keep it at that.
at the rate you're looking at, then you said would be 7.75, is that
7.7.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And that would cover the COLA.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm with Commissioner Turner. I'd like to start there. And
But the only problem with that is, again, I totally agree with what's being said. The only thing is we're already having the picture painted, not only by our local, but our state and federal government, that there may be other cuts, there may be other things happening. And that's the only thing that bothers me. If we leave it at 7.75 and then we get further cuts, unexpected, unseen, or totally out of the ordinary, then, it could have a devastating effect. And we should know that, or at least have a good, clear view of that before we have to set the final millage rate.
absolutely, well, the
So my only
there
point is, if you make it 8 or 8.25, that gives us some wiggle room. And if we see we're not going to have any other further cuts, then 7.75 or down to whatever the number may be.
Or let it stay at 7.9, but not exceed that, but not go above it.
I think just my opinion, 3%, if we can work that out, that's 7.75, guess what? If we
Let's
get these
leave it.
cuts come in, we can always lower it.
Leave it there,
But at least at that point, they would get a raise this year.
because we don't know what's going to
Well,
happen.
the only thing, Commissioner Wills, if the cuts come in, that's going to be cuts to the income side of things, and that's going to be detrimental to our finances. I believe, if I'm understanding. So if we get further cuts, that's going to be revenues we are going to be expecting that will not show up. And if we're stuck at that over the next month at 7.75, we won't be able to deliver COLAs. We won't be able to deliver a lot of things.
I can't argue with anything he's saying. But that's more the reason why I'm locked into that number. Because if we see the revenue, incomes take a sharp decline, we've got to get prepared quicker, And I think COLA goes out, maybe it's a 1.5 at that point, or, something. But we've got to start having a much more aggressive conversation.
Sure.
Because there are some places where we have meat, maybe it's gristle, I don't know, but there's some things out there that can't be cut off the bone.
So the 7.75, Jennifer, would that be a slight taxes increase to each individual?
Yes.
It'd be a tax increase.
7 point, I'll have to calculate that. The 7.585 was 2.1. I believe this will be around 3%.
So, yeah, you showed it represented a 2.3 there, the 7.85.
The 2.3 is at the 7.585.
So you're probably closer to 3%.
Yeah.
Well, then it would be the largest tax increase you and I've ever voted, even at millage.
We hadn't voted yet.
But I'm saying, I don't think you and I have discussed this as a millage factor, having this big of an increase before.
If I can get a connection, I've been going into
Well,
the
we can
property
get-
appraiser sheet to make sure that it's done properly.
Okay.
See, we can't even get internet in here.
I
Just
knew
picking
that
on
was
you,
coming.
Carl.
Give me a second.
Carl?
Okay.
Carl said Ryan's coming to the next meeting.
Almost there. Okay.
include the sheriff, Jennifer?
Yes,
Well,
sir.
that's what Commissioner Turner was saying, that conversation. This would just include
Well,
ours and the Constitution.
7.75 is a 4.54% increase.
Seven what?
4.54% increase.
That's huge.
That's a big increase.
4.54%, Jennifer,
Yes, sir.
on an individual tax basis.
Yes. I think I will say, and I can't, I'm not the expert, but what I do think is a little wonky this year with the values is that the rollback, and I'll go into this a little bit more. I said this at the very beginning, but you probably will understand maybe why I said it a little bit more now. The new construction is $57 million. And so the additional TP&P is $111 million. That's not your average homeowner. Some of that is because of a large construction, or several large construction projects in the county, but one is one of our largest businesses did some improvements, so they expect to pay taxes on their TPP. Another reason why that number is so large is because a lot of the water quality projects that we have going on in Hendry County, a lot of those businesses lease property, lease their equipment.
They have to.
They have to, and they have to pay TPP on that equipment that is being housed in Hendry County.
So y'all tell South Florida Water Management District, thank you.
And so that's also another large portion of this tax increase. I've had several discussions with the property appraiser about this, and then I was marinating on it last night and called her on my way in this morning and talked to her again about it, trying to understand it better. Is this going to go away? Is this like a one-time shot? What is this? What is this? And she feels like this is going to be here for the somewhat near future as far as those values. And so I can't tell you, and this is why I told her this morning, it makes me very uncomfortable to say that this is not going to affect your average taxpayer, because it could and it will, because there's different anomalies and different circumstances on everybody's businesses and their personal tax value. But for your average homeowner who has homestead exemption, they are capped at 3% of a value increase. And so as long as they aren't exceeding that cap of the calculation that they have for each property, they're only going to get they would then only get a potential 3% increase if their value went up. If their value didn't go up, because it's a millage rate decrease, they may actually get a decrease in taxes because the rate is less. It's all based on value. And so we all know that that's different for each property.
Well, again, we can always go down, but if we start at the 7.75, and then we can always go down. But we can't go back up. So.
Yeah, yes, sir.
The
Did you want to speak?
Yes, sir, come on up.
I'd just like to answer Commissioner Turner's question. The sheriff's name's come up a couple times on the budget. As far as an increase in salaries, we have a good relationship with the county. The sheriff's had a great relationship with you all for almost 12 years. Everything we do with the administrator is above board. We don't hide raises in the budget, so no. She's backed it out, and we talked about it beforehand, and we're fine. She knows what she's doing, but we're not hiding any money in there.
Chief Deputy, will the 376, will that include the sheriff's department?
It will.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so y'all would lock them in at a 3% too if we do that? Y'all be
Yes,
good
sir.
with that?
That's exactly what we'll do.
But y'all don't have her otherwise?
No.
So we'll
no
find
shell
that,
games.
and it'll just be an adder to it.
Right,
Okay.
yep, exactly.
deal.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief.
you.
Just to add a little bit more content to the value increase, the 9.69 value increase, the real estate value increase was in total, 6.58%. That included new construction of 57 million. The TPP was 17%. So that is where,
Yeah, but Langdon and Pregley put $1 billion worth of equipment on the ground. I mean, you know, it's absurd what's out there at that job.
right, and so just to,
Yeah.
that, this is a different conversation than what we've ever had before from a value perspective.
And we renamed the road Ron DeSantis Highway, unbeknownst to us.
Did we?
You don't remember
Oh,
the oddest day in the
Yeah.
history of Hendry County? Y'all don't remember?
I do, I didn't, I thought you were serious.
But they did, they had Ron DeSantis Highway.
I was unaware of that.
None of us were.
What do you think about grants? That'd be cut, won't it, from the state? You know how many grants we get every year?
Yes, sir.
And the state's funding is way down, so that's gonna go down too.
Certain types of grants, I think, will go down, and then other types of grants, I think we may actually see an increase in, depending on what that looks like. There's a lot of, there could potentially, who knows, no, none of us know, I certainly don't know, there could potentially be additional care dollars that get rolled out. And then those dollars get rolled out in various different ways through the federal and state government and then down to us locally. So there could be other grants. To my point, there could be additional grants that we might receive for that reason. And so again, with these CARES dollars, anywhere, I went through every single line item very meticulously, and anywhere that we could offset, we cannot, let me be clear, because just to be clear, one of the criteria is it cannot be in the current year budget. So none of these dollars that we're proposing to spend is in the current year budget. But for next year's budget, if it's something that we need to help fight COVID, to help make our community safer due to COVID, and it's something that we might have done maybe a little differently, but we would have still had to have done it anyway. See, those are things that we can offset. We cannot replace lost revenue, but we can be creative in how we offset lost revenue as long as it's COVID related.
Well, so the sheriff has to prepare for a protest or a festival in a different manner. And he has to have more PPE,
Yep,
and Road and Bridge has to have more PPE. That's a cost that would not normally, we would have to wear, so those overhead items can be built into the budget moving forward through COVID dollars, hopefully we'll be reimbursed.
correct.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
What about, we're prepping for hurricane season, obviously emergency management, I'm sure, has taken on the burden of trying to find more facilities to put people in. What are your thoughts on that, Ms. Davis?
I think this is their list. I'm trying to look at this, or no, that's the city, I think, so I'm sorry, the city of Clueston. So there is, EM has prepared a list, and a lot of the dollars that they have requested is in preparation in case of a hurricane, and able to have the proper PP&E and to be able to socially distance properly in the event that we have to do sheltering. That's a large percentage of,
Do they have that stockpiled somewhere in a facility?
they already have some, and then we hope with the approval of this plan to get more.
Yes, ma'am.
And a place to stockpile it.
Yeah.
That's another problem that we have, and so that's part of our request.
Yes, ma'am. So, Mr. Chair, we kind of are at 7.7 something?
7.75.
7.75.
Okay.
And what, so we got a possibility of a storm next week, right?
Yep,
So we got kind of hustle.
supposed to come
Possibly
across by
Monday is saying it could be sitting on top of us.
Sunday night, Sunday,
Yeah, well, I mean, directly over us by Monday.
yeah.
No,
The-
by
the-
Sunday,
The cone of influence is already dialed in,
by
It is.
Sunday.
7 days out? And I gotta start watching TV. Wow, I didn't know that.
I didn't get off TV. I don't trust TV anymore.
But in our EM updates,
Fake news.
I didn't see that detailed.
It is,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So we need to probably take an eyeball at that, maybe ask Rick if he's on his sites.
Well, how are our generators and everything? Everything looking good?
Well, like they always are, we need to put batteries in them, and every one of them, every time we go to use them, we gotta put batteries in them, so I'm sure they all need batteries, and so, batteries and fuel. Is that all we have for budget?
That's all I had for the budget, yes, sir.
So we're gonna, anybody have anything else? Commissioner Swindle, anything?
No, sir, I'm good. I'll be talking to you again at 5.
Yes, sir, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and we'll start back up at 5 o'clock. Thank you,
I'll
everyone.
call back.
Yes, sir.